Today, you people are no longer maggots. Today, you are Marines. You're part of a brotherhood. From now on, until the day you die, wherever you are, every Marine is your brother. Some of you will not come back. But always remember this. Marines die. That's what we're here for. But the Marine Corps lives forever. And that means you live forever.
Hey everybody, welcome to the 5th annual Grumpy Acres Farm Marine Corps Birthday live stream. This is the 5th year I've done this. Ever since we got on YouTube, I decided I was gonna sit down on November 10th, have an adult beverage, and just celebrate the Marine Corps. It's a huge part of my life. It was, my father was in it, my uncle was in it, and I was in it, and it's just it shaped who I am as a man today. And so I want to take some time and reflect on it, and I want to share my love for the Marine Corps with you guys. All right, and if there's any Marines that want to come up, let me hang on a second. Where is it? How do I do this? There it is. Copy. If anyone wants, if you're a Marine and you want to come up and join me on the stream, let's see, that should be, there you go, there's the stream link right there. So I hope everybody's doing okay today. I hope everybody had a great day. I actually had today off. It's one of the benefits of working for a Native American tribe. I want to say hi to everybody in the chat. Let's see, All Americans showed up at 7:10. Man, you get here early. Jane Marie, Len, how you doing, brother? I saw your short earlier. I commented on it. Hope all is going well in retirement, man. Don't know who else is going to show up. I put invites out to a whole bunch of people. In fact, I even put an invite out to some British Marine, or it was on a British Discord, and I put it out there. And we might be visited by some British Marine Corps vets. I've got a story about that a little bit later on, but we'll see what happens. We'll see how this goes, and we'll see where we go on this. You know, first thing, if this is your first time here on the channel, my name's Garen. Everybody calls me Grumpy. I was in the Marine Corps just shy of 10 years. I was at a whole bunch of different duty stations. In fact, I find that when I talk to people, I chewed some of the same dirt as a lot of people. Before we go on, I want to salute. Very first salute of the evening. I want to salute the Marine Corps. I want to salute all my Marine Corps brothers that are out there. And I hope you have a happy birthday. All right. Listen, if you're getting in here, if you're lurking and you're a Marine veteran, post it in the chat. Let us know what your MOS was, if you want to share it, what your MOS was and when you're in. Vietnam era, Cold War era, Gulf War, GWAT, whatever. Let us know, and just let everybody know who you are and when you're in. Just sound off there. Jane Marie says her grandson's a Marine. I'm sure he's a fine man. Yeah, you know. Okay, so I will clear something up. Not all Marines are good guys. I've known some Marines that turned out to be complete shitheels, but we're still connected in that one special way. So I'm always gonna say I'm sure he's a great guy, even if he isn't. You feel free to correct me if he's not. All right. I'm sure, Jamie, I'm sure you wouldn't be a you wouldn't be crowing about him if he wasn't a stand-up guy. Let's see what else. What's on the schedule tonight? Oh, so the United States government, to celebrate the 250th birthday of the Marine Corps, released a commemorative stamp. I'm going to show this to you guys, and then I'm going to give you my thoughts on it. Boom, there it is. It's a little underwhelming, isn't it? It's just literally a white stamp with the Marine Corps logo on it, and it says 250 years. I hats off for them making a commemorative stamp like that. I just really wish they would have gone a little bit more effort on the design there. Not gonna lie. You think after a quarter of a millennia, 250 years, a quarter of a millennia, how wild is that? You think that they put more effort into the graphics, but you know what? As a Marine, we're used to getting shortchanged. That's one of the things about the Marine Corps is if you want to save money on the defense budget, you want the Marine Corps to do it. Yeah, Lynn says all other stamps are afraid of it. You know what? And that's probably going to be the theme tonight, Lynn. Seriously, the theme tonight is going to be how the Marine Corps lives rent-free in everybody else's head. There's a little bit of inferiority complex that other branches seem to go through whenever they're dealing with Marines, because we always hear about I always hear something whenever we show up in the room, right? Of course, not gonna lie, we tend to announce our presence, if you want to put it that way. And it was kind of funny. It was at church on Sunday, and the pastor's an Army chaplain, retired. Or I don't know if he retired, but he was an Army chaplain, and he wanted to do a picture with the vets. So we got up there. There's about 9 of us in the congregation, and myself and a young lady that got out of the Marine Corps in 2023 did her 4 years and got out. So she's just fresh out of the Marine Corps. We're the only 2 Marines in that batch, and I walked up to the group and I said, Hannah and I are here, so you guys are safe. And one of the other vets looked at me and goes, "You're in the Marine Corps, weren't you?" I was like, "Oh, how could you tell? How could you tell I was in the Marine Corps?" But he was Navy. He was Navy. He asked me, he said, were you in the Navy? And I was like, "No, we're in the men's department." But we do. The Marine Corps, probably we got a chip on our shoulder, not going to lie. But we do live rent free in people's heads, which is an awesome place to be sometimes, And guy, if you're listening, if you're watching this and you're from one of the other branches, know that any grief that I give you tonight is out of love. You guys, we're all on the same team, right? It's okay if we fight each other and we tease each other, but at the end of the day, we're all pointed in the same direction and we're all doing the same thing, right? So there's that. All right, let's go to. I got a bunch of banners set up. I actually prepared for this one. Usually I just grab a bottle of bourbon and I sit down and I just start rambling and hope somebody comes in to save the day. But I was like, I'm going to prepare. I'm going to prepare this time so that I can fill up those awkward silences when I'm by myself with content, right? Okay, so here's my story. Here's me in the Marine Corps. This is the short version. So I went to high school at a military academy. My parents taught there, Wentworth Military Academy, Lexington, Missouri. It's an Army affiliated school. Had a ROTC department there. I got into the ROTC commissioning program, the early commissioning program. So I was at Fort Knox at 17 going through ROTC summer camp. My buddy and I were literally the 2 youngest people in the entire 2,500 man battalion. And I was on track to becoming an Army officer. I was too young and I was too immature. And I found that I really enjoyed smoking dope. It was the 80s, you had to be there. Oh, we got a guest. Boom. Len, what's up? This is my buddy Len Huffman. He and I were stationed in Washington, D.C. together. And we got some stories from there. But anyway, about where I come from. So anyway, I bummed around for a couple of years, and I ended up getting fired from a job, and I literally went to the Marine Corps recruiter drunk, and I was like, I just got to get out of here. And so he had a slot in a reserve unit there, and I was like, sign me up. I don't even care what the MOS is. I was extremely lucky it wasn't an infantry unit, because I would have been an infantryman had it been there. It turns out it was a computer operator, and as much as I hate computers, it did a really good job of providing me with a way to support my family after I got out of the Marine Corps. Right. So I did my first tour, and I decided I was going to make a career out of it, and signed up for my second tour, ended up going on sea duty, and then ended up at Washington, D.C. And Len was already there, and there were about, how many of us? About 4 or 5 of us all hung out together?
Pretty much, yeah. It was.
But Angela and I,
Perry, T, Pam, that was most of it.
So, and Angela and I were the only ones that were married, so we kind of provided everybody a landing pad if they wanted to get away from the barracks, or they wanted to someplace to get a home cooked meal. They could come over and crash at our house, and we had some pretty decent parties. I'm not gonna lie, we had some pretty decent parties. But we went through there. But Washington D.C. and Len, you correct me if I'm wrong on this one, right? Washington D.C. is probably one of the worst duty stations a young Marine can get stationed at, because it's a dog and pony show, and it will sap your will to live from you if you let it. Well, and I let it. The Marine Corps was drawing down from the first Gulf War, and we were going from a 40% deployment time to a 60% deployment time. I was brand new dad, brand new husband, and I just decided it was time to get out. And I regret getting out, and I regret not getting into the Marine Corps Reserves, but it is what it is, right? We go with our decisions. But Len, how did you end up in the Marine Corps?
I was getting nowhere fast. I had a bunch of BS jobs, spent some time managing restaurants and working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, barely, on a salary. So it ended up being less than minimum wage, and just working crazy hours, and just decided I had enough, and had all kinds of family that had been in the military and friends that had been in. And it's like, get the hell out of here. So let's go see what they got. And if I was going to do anything, it was going to be Marine Corps, because I like other people saying that I'm just as good as. I don't want to have to say that. So yeah. That's why.
There's a little bit of ego going on there. Not going to lie. You got to have an ego if you're going to be a Marine. Just period. Something I figured out. Something I figured out, Lynn, as I was sitting here getting ready for this. My dad and I were in the same Marine Corps. We were both in 24th Marines there in Kansas City. That's the headquarters of 24th Marines, which is the Reserve Marine Regiment in the 4th Marine Division, is there in Kansas City, and we were both in the same unit, separated by 41 years. That's kind of wild when I think about it. And it just dawned on me tonight.
There's a pretty high chance of that in the Marine Corps anyway. There's not that many units.
Yeah, this is true. So I was looking before we started. Do you realize that at any given time in the last, since the Gulf War, that at any given time there are only about 2.1 million active duty Marines, Marine reservists, or Marine veterans in the United States? So what's the population of the country now? 380 million?
At least 360. It might be 380.
But it's so, we're looking at less than 1% of the population at any given time has any direct service time with the Marine Corps. And it's kind of it is an exclusive club, and that's what breeds the attitude that many Marines have, because it is an exclusive club. Now, give me your opinion. Tell me your opinion on this, Len. So, coming out of Marine Corps boot camp, what was the one thing coming out of Marine Corps boot camp that made you feel different than other people. Yeah, does that make sense?
Well, when you come out of boot camp, you're freaking Superman.
Oh, you end up doing a lot of stupid stuff.
And you don't worry about anything. You're just walking around all cocksure.
Mm-hmm.
When you got your drill instructors telling you not to go kick people's asses, you'll get in trouble.
I've been there. I was thinking about that. So I did a lot of training, getting ready, in our ROTC, and went to several camps there. And the one thing, talking with Army guys, that's different than Marine Corps. So in the Army, they learn the lore of the unit that they're with. So a lot of guys will spend an entire career in the same division in the Army. And there's the Army's 10 to 20 times larger, just depending on when, but it's 10 to 20 times larger than the Marine Corps. So they can spend an entire 20 years in the first infantry division, or the Americal division, so they learn the lore, and they become integrated into, or their identity comes from the unit they're in. And with the Marine Corps, it's so small that you really can't do that, because you're constantly moving from unit to unit. A lot of the infantry guys will spend 4 years in the same unit, at least at regimental or divisional level. But even then, you're moving back and forth between battalions and everything, and it creates a different mindset. You end up the Marine Corps. I think, was it Truman that said the Marine Corps got the best propaganda department in the world, or something to that effect. But they when you're going through boot camp, they indoctrinate you into the lore of the Marine Corps, and that's what it is. It's the lore, the legends. You learn about Chesty Puller, you learn about Dan Daly standing up and telling his Marines, you sons of bitches want to live forever. You learn about all these Marine Corps legends, and it creates a historical bond. Does that make sense? Is that probably the right way to say it? But it creates a historical bond with the past.
Well, you feel obligated to maintain the legacy.
Yeah. You know what? That's the obligation. That is a great way to put it. You're obligated to maintain the standards.
You're talking about coming out of boot camp, just out of giggles, knowing that this was going to happen tonight. I went and got these off my bookshelves. Tell me if this looks familiar.
Where's mine? Oh, hang on.
Talk about the lore. It's all in here. Got that one too. And
guys, this is what when we went through boot camp, this is what they gave us. This is I don't have my glasses on. I can't read it. But this is the practical knowledge book that they give you in boot camp. So going through boot camp, imagine having your camis on with the cargo pocket on the hip, and having this huge, monstrous mass of paper stuffed into that pocket and carrying it around constantly. It literally, the only time it left your side was when you were in PT gear.
Yeah, I got that. Well, they gave us the 3 books. I got that one. I didn't dig that out though. And then you got this one, which was, reference. You didn't really have time to read it. Then they had this one, which we called the knowledge, that you just, it rode around in the hip pocket, or the thigh pocket, actually, all the time. This one, you can tell it's a little beat up. I haven't used it since boot camp, but it took a beating while it was there.
I think I lost that one a long time ago. Well, I've got an entire shelf. I got an entire shelf down here in the library of all the MCI courses I took when I was in the Marine Corps.
Me too.
So there's like math for Marines, spelling for Marines. I've even got the M60 machine gun MCI. And when I say MCI, guys, the MCI, that's Marine Corps Institute. That's the unit that Lynn and I were stationed at in DC at the time, which no longer exists. by the way. But at Marine Corps Institute, and at the time it was the largest long distance learning organization in the entire world, and we did like over 2 million courses every single year, not only to Marines but the Army and NATO countries did them too. In fact, when we were there, I don't. You remember whenever the guys from Czechoslovakia, they had a group come over from Czechoslovakia because they were setting up their own long distance training thing, and they wanted to come over and look at how the Marine Corps did it so they could replicate it for their armed forces. That was right after the fall of the Soviet Union, and they were NATO was kind of courting them at the time. They weren't a member of NATO, but NATO was courting them and trying to woo them away from the Soviet sphere of influence, you know. Yeah, that was a very interesting unit. It was a very interesting unit.
Yeah, we also had pretty good connections with the Dutch Marines and the Royal Marines.
Mm-hmm.
They visited a lot.
I've got a Royal Marine story. That's the reason why I wanted to invite some of them. But I've got a story from the Persian Gulf on the Royal Marines. Actually, I got two stories, to be honest with you. But yeah, you know, like I said, I got out because I was married, and the unit that we were at from May to October, 2 nights a week, we weren't getting home until 1 or 2 in the morning. Right? We would do if you ever go to Washington D.C., they do a Tuesday night parade at the Iwo Jima Memorial there in Arlington, and then on Friday nights they do a parade there at the Marine Barracks, 8th and I. And Len and I, we did not march in it. Our unit was assigned to escorting guests from the gate to their seats. And I'm going to tell you, Len, I never did understand you single guys at the time, because I tell you what, that there were a bunch of young ladies that just so what we would do, folks, we would meet them at the gate, we would salute them, and we'd tell them who we were, and we'd welcome them to the Marine Barracks, and then we'd ask one of the ladies, either a mom or somebody, and we'd offer our arm, and we'd escort them, we'd walk them to the seats with them on our arms. And you know, you always chose the youngest and prettiest, right? It was just one of those things that you did. I even did it, even though I was married, I still did it that way. Man, if I had been single when I was in DC, game on. I would have had so much fun.
Well, the problem really was that the vast majority of them were tourists, and they were with groups. But I did meet a few that were actually from my home area, and we had a few drinks with a few of them, and actually got together with them when I was home on leave a couple of times. Nice.
My hat is off. But I could never understand that. Those guys used to complain about it. The young guys that were in the unit, but they never took advantage of that stuff. You know, I didn't
have any game.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't have any game. Well, they were in the computer field, so that. Well, no, a lot of those guys weren't. They were all admin guys. In the unit we were in. Okay, let's see what is the next topic. Again, we've only got 3 people in chat right now that are active. If you're in there and you're just lurking, go ahead and put something in to say hi. If you're on Rumble or X, I cannot see any comments that you make. So if you want to say something, you got to come over to YouTube, guys. I apologize. That's just one of the limitations with StreamYard. Looking at getting a new software for streaming here next year. Oh, did I just turn something on? Hang on.
You're fine.
Okay. Well, I'm getting feedback on my end. Okay. Every young Marine I ever met was the most physically fit alcoholic I ever seen. Yeah, you know, I fit that bill. You know, Len and all those other guys in that unit that we're in, they used to run constantly. You guys were training for the Marine Corps Marathon and all that stuff.
Mm.
Even as a married guy, I drank. And so where they were getting fit and ready to go, it was basically a maintenance program for me. If I had not been an alcoholic when I was in, I would have been a beast. In fact, the fittest I ever was in my life was coming back from the Persian Gulf because I was only able to drink 12 days out of 6 months. So, and we spent the entire time either on duty or lifting weights. You know, but yeah, absolutely correct. The fittest alcoholic.
Yeah, similar from when I was in Saudi, because you couldn't drink there. Well, most of the time you couldn't. We found ways, but you could either spend your evening watching 40-year-old movies or in the weight area, and it's like 100 degrees out even at night. So you can imagine what the weight benches were like, nasty.
Oh.
Or you could run. So I was running.
Well, and I was on an aircraft carrier, and if you ever met me, if anybody ever meets me in person, it's going to shock you that I am not a runner. Just looking at me physically, you can't tell that I'm not a runner. It's it's going to shock you. Yeah, but we were on an aircraft carrier, and it was a 1.2 acre flight deck, and it took 36 laps around the flight deck to make 1 mile, and that is the most boring physical fitness activity in the world, is running in a circle that small for that long. And our first sergeant on sea duty was a marathon runner, and he was out. He felt everybody should be able to run a half marathon, no problem. So he would take us out, and we would literally go on 10-mile runs while we were out at sea, which sucked. It sucked ass. I'm sorry. Sorry for the language.
That would hurt.
Oh, it did. It did. And what really sucked was during inclement weather, we'd do it down in the hangar bay with all the aircraft when they were chalked down in the hangar bay. Dude, I can't tell you how many guys tripped over the tie down chains and took a face plant right on the non-skid. And if anybody doesn't know what non-skid is, it's a concrete tar mix that's got gravel in it, basically. And it's so the tires can grip. And if you face plant on it, you fall on it, it's the worst case of road rash you'll ever get. We had a guy trip over and bust out his front teeth because he hit the ground so hard. Yeah, it was something else though. But I was one of those guys in most units that they stuck me in the back of the PT formation because I smelled like Jack Daniels. That when I was in Okinawa, we used to use PT to sober up. Seriously, it was roll in at 4 a.m. and make it to PT at 6 and be sober by 7.
I remember too many nights of going over to all the bars over there by Kadena and spending all our money just getting hammered, and it'd be like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and we're based at Camp Kinzer, which is like 5 miles away. So we would literally jog home just in time to change into our PT gear to go on a 3-mile run.
Oh no. I never ran it. I always got a cab. But if you weren't throwing up, you weren't PTing hard enough. You weren't getting it out of your system. Okay, let's go to no. Okay, let's talk a little Marine Corps history. Let me change the banner here. Let's change the banner here. So let's talk a little Marine Corps history. So Len and I were in an MOS where we went to our school in Quantico, Virginia. If you don't know where Quantico, Virginia is, it's about 20 miles south of Washington, D.C. on the Potomac River?
It's 20 miles south of the Beltway. It's probably 30, 40 miles south of D.C.
Okay, but it's right down there, and Quantico is a little tiny town. There's only like 300 people in this town, but it's surrounded by the Marine Corps base. And so every
guys there too.
Yep. Every Marine officer goes through Quantico, and they have since ever. In fact, I had a teacher in high school that was a Marine Corps officer in World War I. and he was stationed at Quantico, and we were talking after I joined the Marine Corps. I went back and visited, and he was personal friends with Dan Daly and John Lejeune. In fact, Dan Daly played on the football team, and Colonel Sellers was the manager of the Quantico base football team. So he knew all these guys before World War One. So yeah, they go through there, and so there's a huge amount of history. In fact, I geeked out. Did you ever go down to I can't even remember the name of the bar. It was down on the main street of Q-Town, but you go in there and they had plaques up on the booths, and like, this is where Chesty Puller used to come and drink, and this is where so and so used to come and drink.
Yeah, it's command post. It was a pretty good bar, but I usually hung out at Sam's, which was down a block or two and across the street, just because it was cheaper, and they had darts. Within a 2 block area, there's like 4 bars.
Well, come on, it's in the middle of the Marine Corps. So anybody that doesn't know, the United States Marine Corps was created 250 years ago in a place in Philadelphia called Tun Tavern. Shockingly, the Marine Corps was organized. The first recruiting effort for the Marine Corps took place in a bar. Kind of set the tone for the next 250 years, didn't it? There's a huge amount of history there. In fact, when I went through the computer operator school there at Quantico, there was a guy that ran the barbershop in Q-Town. He was a retired Marine, and he was the last person in the state of Virginia that was licensed to use a straight razor to shave your head. And he called it peeling the onion. And then he would shave us up, and then he would take the straight razor and give us a high and tight, where he would use a straight razor to like trim the hair down to nothing, down to the skin. But this guy was in the 4th Marines. He was a Peking Marine in China prior to World War II. And Chesty Puller was the CO of that unit before World War II started. But this guy used to tell us stories about being a China Marine and dealing with the Japanese prior to World War II. There were several firefights in the area between Marines and the Japanese soldiers prior to the general outbreak of hostilities. But it was really interesting. Just used to go down there and just sit there and listen to him talk while we were waiting for a haircut, and then we were stationed there at the Marine Barracks in Washington, D.C. The Marine Barracks in Washington, D.C., for anybody that doesn't know this, so during the War of 1812, the British invaded, and they came up, and there was I say big battle, but there was only about 3,000 troops total involved in the fight in Bladensburg, Maryland. And the British drove on Washington, D.C., and they took it over. And the only federal building that did not get burned down in Washington, D.C. was the Marine Corps Barracks. Now, this is okay. Len, do you know the difference between a sea story and a fairy tale?
Alcohol.
So the difference between a sea story and the fairy tale is a fairy tale starts out once upon a time, and a sea story starts out with this ain't no shit. All right. So the story, the official Marine Corps story, is that the Marines comported themselves in the Battle of Bladensburg so well that out of respect, the British did not burn down the Marine barracks. The unofficial story is that the Marine barracks in Washington, D.C. at the time is where they kept the entire supply of rum for the U.S. Navy at the time. And so they did not burn it down because because of all the rum there. They were pilfering all the rum, and they left before they could torch the barracks. So I personally like the story of the Marines comporting themselves so well that it was out of respect. Realistically, though, it probably had something to do with the rum.
Well, that, and it's a mile away from all the other stuff that they burned.
Yeah, it was. Now, if nobody's ever been to Washington D.C., the Marine Barracks is at Southeast I Street, and it's Marine Barracks 8th and I, and it's where the headquarters, not the headquarters, the commandant's house, and they've got what they call General's Row there, which is where all the commanding generals, the infantry, the guy that's in charge of the infantry divisions, guy that's in charge of the air wings, and there's what four or five houses there on General's Row.
Yeah,
something like that. But these are all the guys that make all the big decisions in the Marine Corps, and it's a highly ceremonial place. Like I said, they have parades there, but it's, if you ever get a chance, I would highly suggest getting in contact with the public affairs office there at Marine Corps Barracks and getting tickets to see the evening parade there at the barracks. The one that's at the Iwo Jima Memorial it's impressive. I'm not gonna lie, it's super impressive. But the one at the barracks is a very intimate affair. I mean, you're literally 20 yards away from the parade deck if you're in the high seats.
They've actually moved it. They don't do it on the old parade grounds that you and I did it anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, all that land that was under the freeway over there. They bought all that and turned it into a parade ground.
Really interesting. So they don't do it in front of the portico and everything?
That's what I'm told. I haven't been there to see the new one, but I've got a buddy of mine that went there 5-6 years ago, and I had told him what to look for, and he's like, nope, it's across the street and down a little bit now.
That is crazy. But
it's been, at least that street has been gentrified. I mean, it was a slum when we lived there, but now it's all high-end stuff.
Oh, Angela used to, we had one vehicle, and Angela used to hate coming down and picking me up. In fact, I told her, I said, you know how you got off the freeway right there? And I told her, don't stop at any stoplights. You just blow through until you get to the gate to the Navy Yard. And that way you'll be safe. And she got pretty good at it. She's doing that combat driving. She's like, I almost ran over a crackhead today. Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm glad that they're finally using it. And they've changed that area. I remember sitting on duty in the barracks at night, listening to the drug gangs have gun battles like a block away from the barracks. It was nothing to hear gunshots while we were on duty overnight. And then
when we were there, it was called by the locals. It was called the combat zone. The
only was
it? Was when they were actually on Marine Corps property there, because they knew if anything happened there was a response team come running within a minute.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know if you remember this. They told us that female Marines could not go running off base without a male escort, and male Marines could not go out without somebody with them. You had to go out in pairs because it was so bad. And I remember running down there through Southeast Washington D.C. and like hurdling crackheads that were passed out on the sidewalk.
I used to go out by myself all the time, all times a day too. But I was just on up to Pennsylvania Avenue, down to the mall, up and around the mall and back. But I wasn't out in the neighborhoods much.
Yeah. Well, that's a different route. I mean, when we used to run down past the Navy Yard, down to that area where they built the condos, that was the ghetto. That was like, that was
when I was living in the barracks. When I was living off base, and I would, run with the unit, run with you guys and whatnot. Yeah, we took a different route, and there was always 3 or 4 of us, and there was crap that you had to run through.
Okay, one of my best memories there in Washington D.C. and you were with me, and hopefully you remember this. But we were running, and this old dude comes up with us. He's like, "Hey, Marines," and we turn around. It was the Commandant of the Marine Corps, the number one head honcho. We were running up I Street, as a matter of fact, and he ran with us, and we're talking. And he used to go out. He used to go to the gym and lift weights with the young Marines, but he's out running with us, and we kind of looked at each other, and we're going to smoke this dude. So we picked up the pace, he hung with us, man. He hung with us. He finally turned around. He had to be back for some function. He's like, I got to turn around, Marines. I enjoyed running with you. But he turned around but he hung with us, man. And he was what? And how old were we? 25, 26 years old.
Yeah.
And he was in his 40s, so he was a freaking old man in our minds. He was an old man in our minds, but he hung with us, man. He was pretty cool.
I remember being again while I was living in the barracks itself. I'd be down in the weight room and just waiting my turn to lift weights with everybody else and doing our own thing. And guy just taps on my shoulder and says, "Will you spot me?" And as I turn around, I realize who it is, and I'm like, "Yes, sir." And he's like, "No, relax."
Not going to drop it on you, sir. I promise. Yeah, that was one of the things. I hated that unit. I'm not going to lie. I hated being in Washington, D.C. And that probably, like I said, it sapped my will to live a lot of times. But I will admit there were some pretty cool things that we saw and did while we were there. Being involved in the parades was cool. Getting to see the Marine Corps mascot try to bite Bill Clinton was worth the price of admission. So here's the story, guys. Here's the story. We're at it's a Friday night parade at the barracks, and the big news was the president was going to be there, and it was Bill Clinton at the time. And needless to say, he wasn't the favorite. The guys that used to go down and guard Camp David came back with some horror stories about the way Chelsea Clinton and Hillary Clinton treated him. Just complete monsters. So anyway, there was a young captain. She was a female Marine, and she was the dog handler during the parades. And we had this English bulldog, Chesty the 5th or 6th. Hated that dog. I hated that dog. The dog outranked me at one point. I don't know. Did he outrank you?
Yeah, but he got busted down in rank several times too for biting.
Why did he get busted down in rank?
Because he was biting the wrong people.
Well, he got loose one time. Did you know doggies could get VD or SD? The little female corporal, the little female corporal that was his, took care of him and stuff. Yeah, I was talking to her, and he got busted from sergeant down to corporal because he got loose one time and got some doggy sexual disease from one of the local dogs. So he literally, I was a corporal at the time, and he literally outranked me. And so and then he was an English bulldog, and those dogs, man, he slobbered all over the place, and he very food driven, compulsively. And so the Marine barracks, if you can find a picture of the Marine barracks, guys, they've got this long building on the east side of the barracks. It's got a beautiful portico running from one end to the other. It's the Spanish architecture, but on the inside of that was where they had all the administrative offices, and it was an old building, and it was built before air conditioning, so they had it set up so if you opened up all the doors and windows, you can get a cross breeze. Well, as a result, you could walk from one end of the building to the other, which was an entire city block, without going outside. Well, anyway, you could be sitting on one end of the building and open a bag of food, and you could hear clickety clickety clickety. This dog would smell it from the other side of the barracks and run all the way down, and then plop its butt down in front of you and start snorting at you and slobbering, wanting food. Right? He was a terrible dog. I'm sorry. I understand he was I understand
dumb too.
He wasn't very bright. But anyway, so we're at a parade, and President Clinton goes there, and he reaches down to pet the dog, and the dog wasn't ready for it. So the dog turned around and snapped at him. And I remember we were sitting there. We were over working. It was me and T. We were over working on a computer in the admin offices, and the Washington Post or somebody did a cartoon about the incident, and it showed up, and the captain was there, and so we were all just making fun of her, laughing about it. Yeah, Angela's right. We Yeah, at the time they were looking for somebody to take him because they were retiring him because he was kind of old. I was like, I would have taken him.
You're talking about cool things you got to do there. Just before, I mean, like 2 or 3 days before I got out, me and Pam got sent up to Camp David to go fix some computers up there. So I got to go to Camp David while I was there, look
Oh,
around,
cool.
bought a couple of mugs out of their bar down there or up there. So yeah, I'm one of the few people around that wasn't stationed there that got to go there.
Did you have to go through the whole security thing to get on?
Oh, yeah.
On?
Social security number, all that stuff the day beforehand. You get there, they inspect the car top to bottom, all this fun stuff. Yeah, they didn't trust you at all, and I can't blame them. And they tell stories, the funny stuff that happens there. You had the attack turkey of Camp David. They're under orders not to hurt the thing, but every time the limo one would show up and the doors would open, there goes the turkey into the limo, and they couldn't do anything to get it out.
Well, again, I mean, animals know people. I'm just saying. You know, so did you realize that there were several things that took place this week in history in Marine Corps history? In 2004, the Marines were involved in the Second Battle of Fallujah.
Mm-hmm.
On this date, it started on November 7th. In fact, there's a fantastic documentary out on YouTube right now about the Second Battle of Fallujah, and it was a joint operation. There were Marines, Army, and Navy, and Air Force all involved. But if you get a chance to watch it, it's about 45 minutes long. Fantastic video. And then the Battle of Chosin Reservoir had kicked off this week, and you know, if there's a book out there, probably one of the best, not just Marine Corps history books, but retelling of a historical military event, the Last Stand of Fox Company. So Fox Company, picture this in your mind. You got the Chosin Reservoir, and the Marine units are on the east side. The Army units are on the west side, and there's a crossroad on the south end of the reservoir where all the units, as they were retreating, they had to go through this crossroads. And Fox Company had been assigned the task of securing this crossroad. And there were 146 guys in this company, somewhere like 146, 150. They withstood attack from over 12,000 Chinese for like 4 or 5 days in sub-zero weather. And it's probably one of the best retelling of a military battle that I've ever read. So if you get a chance, the Last Stand of Fox Company, fantastic story, you know. And then you know, it's just all this stuff happens, and it people lose track of history. That's probably what I'm trying to get at is people lose track of history and don't understand what happened in the past on whatever day they're sitting on. I'm sure there's all kinds of World War II stories that happened on November 10th. You know, the one thing from the documentary, they were riding in an Amtrak. The guy was telling a story about them riding in the Amtrak on November 10th going into Fallujah, and they broke apart what's it, the fruit, what's it called? The bread with all the nuts and the fruit in it that comes in the MRE. Fruitcake. The fruitcake. They were breaking apart fruitcake and passing it around on the Marine Corps birthday like you do. So the reason why that's important, guys, on the Marine Corps birthday, they have the Marine Corps the birthday ball, and they have a cake. They have a great big huge cake. And the youngest Marine on the station and the oldest Marine on the station get the first 2 pieces of cake. And then they serve it to everybody else. So these guys were in an Amtrak getting shot at by jihadis, splitting a fruitcake in the middle of this battle just to celebrate the Marine Corps birthday. Okay. Did you ever go through a mess night?
Yes. Talking about the fancy dress, all the procedures, ringing the
Yes.
bell.
Yes.
That. Yeah, that can get very expensive if you screw up.
Yeah, you do pay a price. We don't necessarily pay a money price, but you do pay a price. So what was your thoughts on it? I only went through one when I was in the Marine Corps.
I had one there at 8th and I.
Oh, did you? Oh, they had one there? How did I miss that one? Probably before I got there.
It was only the one, and the wine was awful.
Okay.
One of the courses is a port wine.
So here's what happens in a Marine Corps dining in, and they do it. It's a form of camaraderie, and there's like an official way to do it. It's very structured. They've got a master at arms that makes sure everybody follows procedures. They've got the president of the mess, and everybody's got their seat. And they bring out this. It's roast. What is it? Roast beef, potatoes, and something else, like a side, some veggie side. That's what the meal is. Because traditionally on board the ships, that was like the special meal that people got. Mostly it was hardtack and dried beef. So they bring this roast beef out, and the president of the mess takes the first slice, and he takes a bite, and he announces to the mess, I find this beef tasty and fit for human consumption. Okay, the fact that they have to tell you that it's fit for human consumption tells you a little bit about what shipboard life was like for the Marines of old, right? So you start eating it, and then once the meal is done, and there's all kinds of crazy stuff. Like if you have to get up to use the restroom, you have to ask permission from the president of the mess, and he either grants it or he doesn't. And but once you get done with the meal, and this is where Lynn's comment comes in, they bring out wine so that we can make toasts. But it's port wine, and if you port wine is not the best wine in the world, right? It's very inexpensive, and at a Marine Corps mess night, they bring it out in gallon jugs, not with corks, but with screw tops, and it's like really thick grape juice with alcohol in it. But there are something like 21 official toasts that have to be made at a mess night. And every single toast is accompanied by taking a drink of port wine. Well, about halfway through, the smoking lamp gets lit, and they pass out the most god-awful cigars. Oh my God, these cigars are some of the worst cigars in the entire planet. But you light it up because you're having a good time. You're really enjoying it. You're enjoying the company. I think the one mess night I went to, we were at North Island. I think we ended up with like 43 toasts, and we were extremely drunk by the time it was over. Yeah, Angela's making the point. So Angela's mom at the time was the head of MWR on North Island, and our first sergeant went to her and got her to convince the Navy to let us have our mess night at the O Club. Yeah, it didn't turn out well because we got a little drunk, ended up stealing the Base XO's cover from the O Club. One of the Marines ended up stealing the bell from the bar. So if you ever go into a military bar, I don't care where you're in the world, every single one of these bars has a bell in it. And if you walk in and you do something that is against the rules of the bar, they will ring the bell and you owe everybody a drink. It's standard across the board. I've never been into a Marine Corps bar that wasn't like that.
Hence, it gets real expensive real fast.
Yes. But they stole that. One of our sergeants decided to do a demonstration on line training, the physical, the hand-to-hand combat with one of the bushes outside of the O Club. He may have ripped it out of the ground. He may not have. There's still some. It's not really certain who actually did that, but that's the tree was very offensive. The bush was very offensive. Let's just put it that way. We had a couple of Marines. Did you know that you can get a DUI on a golf course in a stolen golf cart? 2 of our Marines found that out. Thank God they weren't in my squad. I did not have to explain that. Yeah, it was bad. Angela and I were engaged, and I was sleeping at her house. She was living with her parents, and her mom came in and was very angry. Very angry. Actually, I was on board the ship whenever the next morning, but I got a nasty phone call from her that day. But we were woken up at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and the first sergeant was just everybody in the day room got us all in. There were 63 dudes shoved in this little tiny room, and he just read us the riot act on our behavior. And you know what the funny thing is? Compared to what we did in the Gulf, that was actually kind of tame. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we were gonna. You told the story about, or you made a comment about being creative in the Persian Gulf about drinking. What's your story? What's your story on that? Okay. Hold, before you go on. Anybody that's watching this video or watching this live, or you're watching it on replay, I do not condone the behavior that we're talking about. Okay, this is not how you should behave, but it happened, so we're just going to embrace it, and we're going to take it as a learning lesson, and part of the flavor that's made our lives what it is. Okay, now, Len, please go ahead.
The Saudis have a lot of oil. They don't have a lot of technical proficiency, so there's entire compounds of foreigners, mostly Brits and Americans, and some French, that live in these compounds and run their refineries and all that stuff and their wells for them. Well, those groups, they're in their own little compounds, and they had this thing called Hash House Harriers, which was a running group. And I won't go into how they do it. It's fun. It's interesting. It's a good way to kill an evening. But these people also, alcohol's not legal in Saudi Arabia, but all the equipment to make stills is available. So there was plenty of wine and bathtub, whatever kind of alcohol you want in the after party for all these Hash House Harrier things. So you got a bunch of young guys that haven't drank in months out running in the desert, in the heat, sweating profusely, then going drinking cheaply made, high octane alcohol. So dehydrated, drinking damn near Everclear. That's one hell of a buzz in a hurry and one hell of a hangover for the next 3 or 4 days.
Oh yeah, very dirty. We may have made steam pipe hooch on board the ship. In fact, by the time we left the Persian Gulf, the mess cranks, the Navy guys, were not allowed to give us yeast or fruit juice, because we were the great big collapsible 2-quart canteens. We were making, you put the yeast and the sugar in there, and you stick it behind a steam pipe and let it cook for about 4 or 5 days. It's like Listerine with fruit juice in it, basically. So we ended up. So the first one was, it wasn't Jebel Ali. It was one of the UAEs, the Emirates, and we ended up in there, and we were invited over to the consulate, and they were like, the Marine detachment in the consulate was like 8 guys and a staff NCO and an officer. But each one of these guys had their own room, and it was huge. Their rooms were like half the size of our detachment on the ship, or our berthing area on the ship. And they had a fully stocked bar. Well, I ended up playing bartender, and I had my AWOL bag with me. The AWOL bag's a little nylon bag that you always carry all your stuff in. And we filled it full of ice, and we stole every single Rolling Rock they had in the cooler. And then we got a cab because we were going to go over the there was a, it wasn't at the consulate. It was like separated by about 5 or 6 blocks, but they had a swimming pool with a slide and everything. And so we were going to go over there and go swimming. So we jumped, there were 4 of us. We jumped in this cab and we told the guy, hey, take us on a tour of the city. And so we're sitting in the back of this cab and we're sucking down all these rolling rocks. By the time we made it over the swimming pool, because we went, it took us about 20 minutes to go 5 blocks or something like that. But by the time we got over there, we were pretty lit. We had a great time. And then Angela's comment, okay, we're not the reason why the Gulf is dry, but we are the reason that the all the hotels in Jebel Ali would not allow anybody from our battle group, any Marines, to stay in any of the hotels. We pulled into Jebel Ali on November 10th, 1992. Yeah, it was 2. It's because it was after the shooting stopped in the Gulf War. And it was Marine Corps birthday, so we pulled all our money together. We had about $4,000 between about 40 of us. And we drank the Holiday Inn in Jebel Ali dry. And then we behaved like young drunk Marines behave. I'm not, again, this is where the I'm not condoning the behavior comes in. We did about $15,000 worth of damage to the hotel. So that the next time we pulled into port, none of us could get a hotel room. No hotel in the entire city would allow. They were checking IDs and they would not allow any Marines to stay in any of the hotels. So we ended up staying on board on the pier, drinking 25% or 25-cent Budweisers, eating Sbarro pizza, watching Lethal Weapon. I think was on the big screen there on the berthing area. But yeah, it was we may have almost created an international incident there. But like I said, we were in the Persian Gulf for 6 months and literally had 12 Liberty Days in 6 months. And I'm not complaining about it because there were dudes that spent almost a year in theater and they were on land the entire time and they got no Liberty Days whatsoever. So I was extremely lucky. But the things like that, the first Gulf War was our war. And I look at what Marines that followed us went through. So whenever the Operation Iraqi Freedom took place, one of the girls I worked with, I'd been out of the Marine Corps for almost 8 years at the time. No, 6 years. One of the girls I worked with had a boyfriend that was in the Marines. And so we started, the kids started writing him while they were doing the buildup. And he actually kept a picture that my daughter drew on the visor of his Humvee as they were invading Iraq. And he wrote back and forth all the time. The kids loved getting letters from him. Then I got a letter one day from him and it was addressed to me. It wasn't addressed to the kids. And I was like, something's going on here. So he was in the amphibious unit that went through Al Nasiriyah. And if you don't know, the battle in Al Nasiriyah, the Iraqis ambushed a Marine column and took out a bunch of Amtraks and killed and wounded like 20-something Marines. But this guy wrote me a letter telling me about the battle and basically dumping how he had lost some friends during the battle. And it really kind of struck me. I was like, these dudes, are, I'm not gonna lie, the first Gulf War compared to Iraqi Freedom and the GWAT, completely different animals. And they went through it, and I look back. So the teacher I told you about that was a World War I veteran, mm-hmm. He was at Belleau Woods. He was a lieutenant in a machine gun platoon in Belleau Woods. And he got shot through and through in a lung. And then while he was on a stretcher, he got gassed. and he would tell us stories about that, and it's like, these guys. And I don't know if you remember when they had the Iwo Jima Memorial service there. It was the 50th anniversary of the Iwo Jima landings. Mm-hmm. So the 50th anniversary of Iwo Jima, they brought as many survivors from the battle together in DC as they could, and there were several thousand of them. Mm-hmm. And it was a huge crowd. It was the biggest crowd for a Tuesday night parade I ever remember having. And they had everybody was there. President Clinton was there. They had the chaplain that gave the benediction on the day of the invasion. He gave the opening prayer for the service. And the one thing that struck me about that whole thing was, those dudes were grandpas, man. They were the same age as my grandpa, and they look like grandpas. I don't know if you remember doing it. We took them all to their seats, and seriously, they were all like grandpas. And then the Gold Star widows, I guess they would have been kids at the time, or maybe they were widows. Anyway, they'd lost loved ones at the battle, and they same age as my grandma. The stuff that these guys did, and their predecessors and the guys that came after us, just is awe-inspiring. So Emily Smith says, my family was in the military. My grandpa was involved in the Navy, loose lips sink ships. They say, my brother's platoon was killed when they took. Okay, my brother's platoon was killed when he took a leave, and he will never be the same. So they had people get killed while he was on leave. One of my neighbors was in the military, and he came back from Afghanistan. His wife took off with the Afghanistan guy, and that came. Oh my God. Okay, there'd probably be some bloodshed there. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of, yes, the military makes you age more.
It ain't the years, it's the mileage.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I stayed in computers. I tried really hard to get out of the computer field. Every time I tried to get out. So when Len and I were in the MOS for the computer operators, the computer systems, was the 4000 series, which that went away, right? It no longer exists.
Yeah,
it's something completely different. But so there were 182,000 Marines at the time, and there were only 1,800 computer people, like in the 4000 series. And it was kind of cool because no matter where you went, you knew somebody, right? You always knew somebody wherever you got transferred because it was so small. But every time I tried getting out, they'd be like, okay, you can get out of the computer field. You can be a grunt or nothing else. So the only option they gave me was being a grunt. Quite frankly, it's too much damn walking to be a grunt. Seriously. So way too much walking. I knew dudes, and you knew guys like this too. These guys were like 22, 23 years old that had bad hips and bad knees and bad ankles, and were getting like medically discharged because they were so screwed up. And I did not want to do that.
I had a roommate when I was going through the school at Quantico that ended up with flat feet, and he got put out. He could barely walk into it.
Well, that's painful, man. Once your arches fall like that, hey, that's painful. That's painful. One of the couples that we met on the circuit that we go on the festival circuit, he's a Marine veteran, and he got medically retired because it screwed his knees up so bad. Oh yeah, Emily says keep your feet as dry as possible. Okay, so here's what happens in the Marine Corps. Here's what happens when you're out in the field. Here's what happens. You get a boo-boo. You hurt your foot, you hurt your knee, you hurt your ankle, you hurt something. Here's the way the conversation goes. Doc comes up, he goes, "What happened, Marine?" And you tell him what happened. And he goes, "Are you hydrated? You need to drink some water." Okay, no, my ankle's screwed up. Well, okay, I've got a 800 milligram Motrin. This will make you feel better. Grunt candy is what they called it. Oh, and by the way, you need to change your socks. Make sure your feet are dry. That was the standard, the boilerplate response to any time you got hurt. Dry socks, hydrate, and here's your Motrin. Dude, I don't know about you. There were times when I had shin splints when I was going through NCO Academy and they're in Yuma. Dude, I was taking like 2,400 milligrams of Motrin a day just to keep the pain at bay.
Never had to go to the NCO Academy.
Yeah, it was a good experience. I'm glad I went through it.
If I had stayed in another 6 months, I was on the schedule for it. In fact, a couple of guys in our group, DeMonte, Ski, they both went. And
yeah, they did.
I was next up to go, but got out.
Dude, so you got out a couple of months before I did. You know what they did to me? Typical Marine Corps. This is just, so I made the decision to get out and I let everybody know it. 2 weeks before I got out, it was my time to go to the rifle range. And they said, "Oh, you got to go to the range." And I was like, "I'm out in 2 weeks." So they sent me to the range. I'm like, "Fine, F it. I'll deal with it. I'll just do it." And I shot expert the entire time I was in the Marine Corps, except the last time I'm there, the weather was the screwiest weather I had ever seen. I got out in May, and so it's like the last week of April. We're out at the rifle range at Quantico, and it starts sleeting. And the dude's out there. He's got a poncho on, and you know how they've got the Smokey Bear hat with the big brim. He's got freaking icicles forming on the brim of his cover. Right. The very next day, it's 60 degrees. So we got rained on in the morning, and then we're out there training just with soaking camis. I was the only time, the entire time I was in the Marine Corps that I did not shoot expert. Just because at that point I was like, I don't care. I just do not care anymore. This is so damn stupid.
After boot camp, I only had to qualify one time, but that's because when I was in Okinawa, we were out there qualifying. You know how you spend a week at the range, and on the last day you qualify.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we were on the edge of a typhoon the whole freaking time, just sheets of rain coming down the whole time. You couldn't even keep score on your book because it was just drenched. And then finally, on the 5th day when we're supposed to qualify, they canceled it. It says too much rain. I've been here 4 days for this shit.
Dude, I'll tell you what, man. That was at camp, the range at Camp Hansen.
Uh-huh.
Dude, I'll tell you what. That is probably one of the hardest ranges to qualify on, because so anybody that doesn't know, the Marine Corps qualification, rifle qualification, you shoot at 200 yards, 300 yards, and 500 yards, right? And they've got it set up. There's 50 shooting positions, and it's it goes down the 500 yards. They've got a berm down at the end, and you've got target pullers down the bottom. You're running the targets up. Anyway, the range at Camp Hansen is on the side of a mountain. And there's ravines between the 200 and 300 and the 500 yards. So there's two ravines, and they've got range flags that show you which direction the wind's blowing. And as God is my witness, on the firing line, the flag's blowing like this. At the 200 line, it's blowing like this. At the 300, it's blowing like this. 500, it's blowing because those ravines they go down to the ocean. And they're like pulling the air off the cool air off the mountain down across the range. And that was the hardest range I ever shot at. Compared to Camp Lejeune and the one at Quantico, God, those are so easy to shoot at.
Throwing a typhoon.
So I never got canceled because of a typhoon. I did get canceled because of a sandstorm in Yuma one time, which sucked. I had the only time I was in the military that my bolt would not work on my rifle because there was so much sand in it. Literally took like 2.5 hours to get all the sand out of the rifles that day. The sand was coming off down in the butts. The sand was coming down like snow off a roof. You know how it blows like that off a roof, except it was sand.
Yeah, I've been through sandstorms in Saudi and in Arizona. The last time I qualified was when I was based in 8th and I, but they took us over to Fort Belvoir to do our shooting there, and it was like February, so it wasn't all that fun there either.
Yeah, they break out the silver bullets full of coffee and chicken broth for us people that don't like coffee. But you know what? You said you qualified twice the whole time you're in?
Yep.
Dude,
I only had to go to qualify twice. One time I didn't even qualify because they canceled it.
Dude, don't worry. I took up your slack. I ended up spending 9.5 years in, including boot camp. I went to the rifle range 12 times. There were a couple years I went twice, just because I switched units and they were going to the rifle range, and I had to go. I was like, I just qualified, but you didn't qualify with this unit, so you got to go. And I still got
kind of like mess duty. Every time you show up someplace new, you get stuck with it.
Oh yeah. Oh, you know what? Honestly, God, truth, the only time I had to do mess duty was at 8th and I, and it was the first week I was there. And oh God, this is such a good story. This is the Marine Corps in a nutshell, guys. Seriously. So I'm on station for a week, and we had our son. I'm a dad. I'm a dad for like 7 days at the most. Zero sleep, trying to take care of my wife, trying to get the apartment set up. I got to go do mess duty. So I go down there, and the guy the staff NCO that was in charge of the chow hall, do not let anybody in that does not have clean boots and a clean uniform. Okay. I'm cool with that. You know, I'll do whatever you say. I don't care. So I'm sitting there at the desk checking ID cards, and all these dudes come up. Their uniforms are covered in dirt. Their boots are all dirty. I'm like, dude, you guys can't come in. And they started losing it. They got very angry with me. And this kind of set the tone between me and Alpha Company the whole time I was there, because they remembered me. I was like, no, you can't come in. Go clean your fucking boots off. Go change your uniforms, and then you can come in. And I got a staff sergeant comes up and just starts cursing at me and just reading me the riot act. They just come out of the field, and he's like, dude, sorry, I've got orders. I cannot let you in. This is what I was told. And finally I looked at him and I said, Staff Sergeant, go talk to the gunny. If he says you can come in, I don't care. Just if he says it's okay, it's okay. You can come in. Right now, you're not coming in. Well, at that time, this older gentleman comes in. I'd never seen him before in my life. I had no idea who he was. He was in civilian clothes. And we're talking, and I'm talking to him just like he's a dude off the street. And this staff sergeant just starts reading me the riot act. And it was the God, what was the colonel's name that was in charge of the barracks? It was him. And I'm like, I don't know. And the staff sergeant's reading me the riot act. I'm like, I have no freaking clue who he is. I have no idea who this guy is. He's in civilian. He did not identify himself. I'm not going to treat him any different than anybody off the street unless he does that. And so, yeah, that kind of set the tone between me and Alpha Company at the Marine Barracks the entire time. Had some friction, not going to lie. Okay, so we've talked about, let's see. Where are we? I don't even remember what we put. No, I didn't have anything. What's the next banner? Okay, the new fight. Let's talk about, have you been following what the Marine Corps is doing as far as the restructuring?
And not very closely. It was like 6 or 8 months ago. I read something like basically they got rid of all the tanks, and they were trying to get ready to island hop. Yeah,
exactly. And that's where they are now. So they've got the Force 2030 is what they're calling it. They got rid of the tanks because they are going to lighter units. They've created these things called Marine. What are they? Hang on a second. Littoral regiments, and they are self-contained, self-deployable units. Imagine a Mu only with a more focused mission to go. And they've got the coolest things. They're called Nemesis batteries, which are anti-ship. They're Tomahawk missiles mounted on the back of LVTs or Humvees, and they land these things and they take over these islands, and they're made specifically to deny sea lanes to the Chinese, because the coming battle that we're going to be involved in is going to be littoral combat, where they're controlling sea lanes and the logistics of it. They've got they're getting rid of the Amtraks. They've got a new amphibious vehicle, and if you guys go look it up, man, this new vehicle is pretty cool. It's wheeled instead of tracked. It's about the same size as an Amtrak, a lot more heavily armed and armored. Should be very interesting. It's like a LAV on steroids, so to speak. What else? They're getting rid of the AV-8B, the Harrier, replacing them all with F-35s, which should be interesting. I guess they got all the kinks worked out of the F-35s. And they are the CH-53K. Now, when you and I were in, if I remember correctly, the newest model of the CH-53, which is, if you guys know what the CH-53 is, that is the big, heavy lift helicopter. It's the one you see in all the movies, where they're pulling Marines out and pulling embassy staff out. It's the big helicopters. The newest one, when we were in, was the E version, which had just came out in the early 90s. And so they're on the K version now. So I'd really be kind of cool to see the avionics and all this stuff, because that airframe's been around since 1971. They used them in Vietnam. So the A versions were used in Vietnam. Be kind of cool. Let's see here. All American says he's got a couple of videos on his channel of him riding in a CH-53. I never did get to ride in a 53. I got to ride in the 46, which is the Sea Knight, the little 2-engine one. Those things were like little race cars. Emily asks, what are citizens supposed to do when missiles hit? They are not telling us in California. Emily, here is my advice. Do not wait for the government to tell you what to do. You need to do research on your own. Is there a possibility of nuclear war? Yes. Anytime you've got nuclear armed adversaries going at each other, there's always the possibility. We have to weigh the probability against the possibility. I can't see the Chinese, and that's who the adversaries are going to be. I cannot see the Chinese seeing a benefit in starting a nuclear war. It just the payoff, the juice is not worth the squeeze. Now, what I would be concerned about is hacking attacks on the grid, shutting down the electricity, and or EMP attacks. That's what I would be concerned about. And I would take time and I would study and learn about how to mitigate the negative repercussions of something like that. The other thing is there's a lot of talk, not only through official channels but unofficial channels. There are tens of thousands of jihadis in the country, and there's a real threat of attacks on our infrastructure in major cities. Imagine little mini 9/11 attacks all across the country, only instead of airplanes with AK-47s and bombs. So do with that what you will. Simple fact is, Emily, you are responsible. All right, everybody in chat, you are responsible for your safety. If you're waiting for the government to tell you what to do, you're placing your faith in the wrong place. Period. So that's my advice.
If there's going to be a kinetic fight, it's going to be happening worldwide. It's going to happen here and there. It's going to be a giant mess.
Oh yeah. Well, and again, I'm very pessimistic about it at this point. I'm very pessimistic. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about the force structure and the Marine 2030 program, is because the further away from the shores that we can take the kinetic fight, the better. The American populace is not ready for that. They as a whole, the mentality's not there, right? Fact is, we're no longer separated. We're no longer separated by two oceans from what happens. 9/11 put that to bed. And Emily says we've already had attacks. Yes, there have been attacks. The attacks that have happened, frankly, in a country this big, they're pinpricks. But they're talking multiple attacks, multiple cities, all at the same time. And the government realizes this. Okay, so we're gonna go into a little bit of modern politics and stuff. The government realizes this because the government has been. There are reports. In fact, I just saw a video today. The law enforcement and DHS is looking at creating quick reaction forces, QFRs, in every single state, and they're specifically meant to handle things like this. I'm not sure what's going on there. I don't know. There's something going on in chat. Angela's handling. She can deal with any drama that she creates. Love you, sweetheart.
Angela, drama? The two never mix.
That's why we love her. No, but seriously, and from a Marine Corps standpoint, and Lynn, again, you correct me if I'm wrong. All right. From a Marine Corps standpoint, we deal with things with the things that we have on hand. The Marine Corps, I said it earlier, if you want to save money, give the job to the Marine Corps. All right. So the Marine Corps, out of every defense dollar, the Marine Corps used to get about 5 or 6 cents. Right. Mm-hmm. During the invasion of Grenada, that 5 or 6% just took care of about 90% of the objectives in Grenada. During the Gulf War, the invasion of Iraq, that 5 or 6% ended up accomplishing about 40% of the objectives during the invasion. Right. You deal with things with what you got, right? And as civilians and as people that are in a preparedness sphere, this is a mentality we have to have, and you assess your situation, and then you deal with it the best you can, and you move at making your position better. Every single position. Right, I'm sorry. Every single day should be better than the last day, right? I don't know what's going on there. Anyway, okay. So Emily, that is my suggestion to you. If you if you have any other questions, please ask them. No, let's see here. What do we got now? Okay, now let's talk about. Oh my gosh, I got all kinds of windows open, Lynn. I'm not quite sure. No, hey, Belt Loop, you're okay, man. You're okay. She's trying to protect the stream, man. You are okay. You can stick around. So let's talk about another topic, if you will. Boom. Let's talk about the human element, recruiting, retention, and readiness. Now, when you join the Marine Corps, what's your one recollection about your recruiter?
Well, at the time, he was very, I was impressed physically and his attitude, but he was also, came off as a car salesman. So I knew he was full of crap, but I walked in knowing that because my uncle had been in the Marines for quite a long time, and I talked to him long before I ever went and talked to a recruiter. So he had done recruiting duty before. He says, you expect him to come this way and that, and he won't be lying on any of it, but it won't exactly be. Could be a little exaggeration here or there, or there could be a lot of you could do this or you could do that. He's not going to promise you it.
I like that. A little bit of exaggeration. That's like the king of understatement right there. I used to call it they serve you recruiter soup. They'll tell you it's delicious, but they won't tell you what's in it. My recruit, like I said, I showed up at the recruiting office drunk. Actually, no, I take that. I was sobering up. I was not drunk when I showed up. I was sobering up. But the guy that recruited me, he's like, dude, I love you. You're the easiest recruit I've ever had. Because I didn't care. I was like, just sign me up. I don't give a shit. I don't care. I was 20 years old, so I was older than the guys that did. So this guy in Grandview, Missouri, he got banned from the high school because he went in and he one of the wrestling team guys had joined the Marine Corps as the early, the delayed enlistment thing. So he was just going into his senior year. He went and he took all the guys on the wrestling team to McDonald's after practice one night. And there were like 13 dudes in the back of this pickup truck. It was the 80s. Guys, in the 80s, you could ride in the back of a pickup truck and nobody said squat. Nobody cared. But out of those 13 guys, he ended up signing up 8 of them. The wrestling coach was pissed, hated the recruiter. And he got banned from the high school. He got banned from the high school because they wouldn't let him back in. But this guy had okay, let me put it this way. So they ask you a question. They ask you a question when you join the Marine Corps. Have you ever done drugs? That was the big thing. That was the big thing when back in the 80s was drugs. I guess in the early 90s it was, have you ever stolen anything like digital material or anything? That was how they decided if you were morally upright, I guess. But anyway, so I was honest. I was like, yeah, some people experimented with drugs and I did full scale research. Right. And he's like, God, he put his hands, he's like, oh God, no. And he goes, okay, listen to me. And he goes, watch me. He goes, have you ever done drugs? And I was like, I thought about it for a second and I go, no, I haven't. and it went well for after that, the guy was a fantastic recruiter though. Yeah, but that was probably should have been sober when I went in there.
Do you remember the first day or two when you're in boot camp and you haven't slept yet since you've been there, and they have the moment of truth where you have to, they want you to confess everything?
Oh, I remember that. I also remember what the recruiter said. He flat out said, he said, "You keep the lie up. You do it, you. This is what you said. You stick with it."
My opinion was I already said what I have to say. I don't need to say it to you too. So,
Yep, exactly. And there's always that knucklehead. There's always one dude in the platoon at least. Oh God, I lied. I can't. And you end up paying the price, right?
I have a buddy that went into the Navy and he did that crap. He went in. He was supposed to come out an electrician, and he came out a truck driver, which is not a bad thing, but it's not what he signed up for. But he told the truth in the moment of truth, and that screwed his whole contract.
Yep. What was it? What was in the Marine Corps? With bulk fuel. Bulk, like in the military, every single branch of the service has military operation specialist. So this is your job. That your MOS is your job, right? And there's a hierarchy. And quite frankly, Len and I, when we were in, we were kind of at the top of the food chain. Everybody was trying to get into our MOS. In fact, it was so shorthanded and in such high demand that our promotion got shut down for 2.5 years because everybody was transferring. We had a bunch of staff NCOs and sergeants that had been in the Marine Corps for 6 years moving into our MOS. So as a Lance Corporal and a Corporal, you couldn't get promoted because all these dudes were jumping in ahead of you and picking up the spots.
In fact, Corporal, I had the time in service and the points from all the other stuff you do to be a sergeant.
Well, and that was one of the things that ticked me off when I was when we were at Marine Barracks, because we were shut down. The only people that got promoted to sergeant for 2.5 years were meritorious. So over 2.5 years, they do one every, was it 6 months or every quarter? But they're only like,
ever happened to was for Ski. He's the only one that got sergeant while I was there.
Yeah, but there were like the entire MOS. There were only like six or eight guys over 2 years that got promoted to sergeant, and I had been in the Marine Corps about 6 months less than you and T and everybody else, and I got fed up with it. And I was like, I'm not gonna. I'm tired of chasing this number. Yeah, I'm tired of trying to get promoted. I'm not going to get promoted, so I just quit working at it. And then they opened up promotions, and you guys all got promoted a month before I did because I quit working at it, and I was like, I don't care. Then the promotions happened, and
we were also going through a reduction in force at the time. In fact, at the time they were calling it the peace dividend. They were cutting people loose left and right. I had several guys I went to high school with that were in the Air Force and whatnot that their jobs just got eliminated. So they weren't even offered to re-up. Yep.
Yeah, we went from that 2 years we were in Washington, D.C., we went from 182 to 167,000 Marines. They got rid of 14,000 Marines. Is that right? 15,000? That's a huge number. Huge number. And so the thing about the human element, the recruiting and retention, when we were in, it was kind of an easy sell to stay in. They were getting big bonuses. There wasn't a war on. The threat of getting killed was not that great when we were in. Throughout the GWAT, the Global War on Terror, and through the Biden administration, whenever they were going through the woke stuff, the Marine Corps was the only branch of the military that was making recruitment commitments. They were making all the milestones. They were keeping people coming in, and that goes back to what we talked about earlier. That's that whole mindset. You want to challenge, join the Marines. You want to be the best, join the Marines. Yeah.
Well, when we were in, there was some other demographic things going on. The boomers were taking all the jobs. I mean, it was hard to get a job in the late 80s, early 90s in our age group.
Yeah, it's
The
true.
military was actually quite attractive just to have a job and a place to put your head.
Dude, so I got my first reenlistment, I got a $4,000 bonus to re-up, and when the second time around, when in DC, when I decided to get out, it was a $10,000 signing bonus to stay in. You know, as if I had been single, I would have jumped on that in a heartbeat. Seriously, that was a no-brainer. But again, you know, I wanted to stay married. I wanted to spend time with my son, and so it was time to get out. In fact, I woke up one morning about 2.5 months, about two and a half months before enlistment was up. I was debating about it. I had a conversation with Colonel Boggs, and he encouraged me to stay in. And I woke up one morning and I rolled over and I looked at Angela and I was like, I don't want to put the uniform on. And no matter what happened, the entire time I was in the Marine Corps, I always wanted to wake up and be a Marine. I always wanted to put the uniform on, and I always wanted to do it. And that morning, I was like I don't want to do it. I don't want to put the uniform on. I want to stay here. And she looked at me. You know, she's a Navy brat, and she looked at me and she says, "It's time to get out." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right. It's time to get out." Yeah. And honestly, looking back on it, it was not. I'm not going to say it was the wrong decision, but I'm not going to say it was the right decision either, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
A lot of ways happened.
Yeah, exactly. It's the way it happened.
There's possibilities. I know joining in the first place is the smartest thing I ever did.
Oh, yeah. Oh, dude, it kept me. I'm not going to lie. It probably kept me alive and it kept me out of prison. Plain and simple. I was not hanging out with the right kind of people. You know, one of the things the Marine Corps is doing right now is they've got this 2030 program. So they are actively trying to keep Marines enlisted and keep retention up. Apparently there's a huge movement to overhaul all the barracks. And you know, and when we were in, you know, when we were in Washington, D.C., the reason why Angela and I had to live in Burke, Virginia was because they had literally condemned 400 and some Navy units over at Anacostia Air Force Base. They literally shut down because they were trash. They were complete trash. And I've heard horror stories. I've seen videos about guys living in barracks where they're just terrible condition.
I heard about whole wings of Walter Reed Hospital being full of freaking mold.
Yeah, exactly. Bill Loop says, "Are you familiar with Grumpy Grunt? He's in the night." Nope, not sure about him. Probably have to check him out. You know, but I hope they get it under control, especially with everything that's going on in the world today. I hate to say it, you know, it's hard. I had a conversation with a mom the other day. Her son wants to join the Marine Corps, right? I would have a hard time. I would have a hard time letting my son join the military right now, knowing what's coming and knowing what they're going to have to do. It's scary as a parent right now, to be honest with you.
I got a nephew that I was working with or talking to a couple of months ago. He was about to go to OCS over in Quantico. I mean, he was all dead set. He just wanted to run a few things by me. And over the course of a week when we were talking, he actually got an offer to play minor league baseball for some team, get in the farm system for the major leagues. And he's like, well, I can go do that for a couple of years. His end goal is to be able to pay for med school. He wants to be a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to join the military and build up some leadership skills and hopefully get them to pay for some of this stuff, or he can go play baseball.
Did you talk him out of joining the military?
I did not. I just was honest with him.
Yeah, I can't argue with your logic there. Okay, now here's something. We're talking about the human element here, all right? And when you and I were in, this was not a big thing. Since GWAT, the whole mental aspect of being a vet, not just Marines, any vets. The 22 veterans a day are committing suicide. So one thing, if I have any complaints, any critique of the way the government handles veterans affairs, is they do a terrible job of managing mental health of guys coming out of the service. I've known 2 veterans that committed suicide. In fact, the CO, the guy was a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps, as a matter of fact. He was the CO of our VFW chapter. Just got married very late in life, had an adopted daughter, had a brand new baby, and he went into the shed in back of his house and took his life. So it's a huge, and he was a GWAT veteran. He went through the surge in Iraq, and it was bad. And the other guy was going through the surge as well. The mental health aspect of being a veteran is not talked about enough, period. And as such, I want to share, anybody that's out there, if you're a veteran, if you're a veteran, or if you're just not a veteran, 988, that is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. If you need somebody to talk to because you're having emotional problems and this is something that's on your mind, please call this number. Get on there and ask for help. There's people out there that have been through what you've been through, and they are willing to talk to you, and they want to help you. All right. There's a 5 Finger Death Punch song about this that just cuts straight to the bone, and it's something we need to talk about. It's something we need to address. And as veterans, if you're a veteran out there, even if you're not a Marine, even if you're one of those people that decided not to become the best, if you decided to take the easier road and go join the Army or the Navy, or God forbid the Air Force or Coast Guard, go out there and be a support line for your brothers in arms. All right. We need to help each other. We need to make sure that, we're helping as many people as possible and saving lives. All right. Let's see here. Okay. Next one. See, I told you I got a bunch of banners here. I'm trying to keep track of everything that's going on. Let's see here. Where are we headed? Where's the Marine Corps headed? Len, what do you think about the situation in the Western Pacific? What do you think is the most probable course of events?
I can't claim to be any kind of expert, but I've listened to experts. In fact, I know one guy that I've watched a lot and read his books. You have too. Is Peter Zohan.
Mm-hmm.
If he's anywhere near right, we're worrying about a lot of stuff that's not going to happen, because he's of the opinion that demographically, China is going to fall apart on its own, probably fracture like it has many times throughout history. And right now, everybody's worried about China and taking over the sea lanes and all of that. China cannot, they have to import all of their energy and most of their food. And they don't have a blue water navy. All they've got is coastal stuff. They don't have anything to get more than 1,000 miles from home.
Mm-hmm.
So we could easily park a carrier group somewhere near Indonesia and shut them down in a week. Getting no oil, getting no food, end of story. So I don't really see anything happening there unless we get real dumb and totally isolate ourselves from the world. And if we do, then it's not our fight, it's Japan's fight. And they have the second largest blue water navy in the world, and they can do the same thing that I just said we could do.
Well, and that, you bring up a good point. The thing about Peter Zohan's predictions, and I think he's on point. I think we're going to see the American foreign policy pull back and be more regional, worried about the Western Hemisphere rather than the entire world. I mean, just simple fact is we can't afford to be the world's policeman anymore. It's just not financially workable, right? And you're going to see a lot more regional powers step up. I see us dominating the Western Hemisphere, but I also see as a matter of national survival, I can see the government pushing power into areas where it's needed, i.e., the Straits of Malacca, the Southeast China Sea, that area. They recently did a war game, and the outcome was, over the course of 3 weeks, that we bludgeoned China into a stalemate where we have the upper hand, but in the process, we lose one, if not two, carriers. All right. What happens on the home front if we lose two carriers? We're talking 5,200 souls on each one of those ships, not including all the pilots that we would lose and all the other ships. I as a country, I don't know if we're ready. As a military, I like what's happening as far as rebuilding our forces from where they were. Let's face it, coming out of GWAT, the military was worn out. I mean, there's a 35% of Marine Corps aircraft were functional at any given time, or over the early 2020s, and it wasn't for lack of trying. It was just they on an operational scale, they just could not keep them going, and it was like that across the board. The Air Force was like that, Navy was like that, Army was like that. I mean, it's just that it was not funded properly and it was not taken care of properly.
I'm sure that the think tanks and whatnot are studying this, but we need to pay real close attention to what's going on with Ukraine and Russia, because Ukraine, a non-military power, has managed to keep Russian ships in port in the Black Sea. Right? They're afraid of losing their ships because they have lost some ships already to basically pissant military that on paper Russia should have steamrolled them in the first 2 weeks. So here we are 3-some years later, and they're punching well above their weight, and they're doing that with creative thinking and getting creative with what they're doing. You can expect a whole hell of a lot of that more going on here. You can't expect to fight the last war.
This is not taking anything away from the Ukrainians. Okay, this is when I say this. They managed to survive because the West and the United States specifically pumped a ton of money and a ton of equipment into that theater. Now, the United States equipment that was given to them, they make a big deal about the M1A1s being destroyed. Actually, they weren't even A1s; they were just M1s. The 32 M1s that they gave them were 1980s technology. In fact, I would not be surprised if they were not the same version of the M1s that we saw pulling into Camp Lejeune in 1992, whenever they came back from the Persian Gulf.
Yeah, a lot of what we sent them was surplus that we would have had to destroy it anyway.
Exactly. So we've been giving them 30, 40-year-old technology. And I've always believed that Russia was a paper tiger. We actually had a CIS, it was the Commonwealth of Independent States is what they called Russia in the early 90s. We actually had one of their destroyers working with us. Saw the very first Russian helicopter to land on a U.S. Navy vessel. Not impressive at all. And then our XO and our CO went over. They did a cross ship transfer of officers. Their officers came over to our ship. Ours went over theirs. They came back and they were not impressed. They were not impressed at all. So it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me that Russia's had a hard time.
Well, my point was that it's not going to be a conventional. The next conflict's not going to be conventional at all. I mean, how did Ukraine strike 1,000, 2,000 miles into Russia? On the back of frickin' semi trucks, they hauled stuff under tarps and nobody noticed until they're right next to the bases. Sound familiar? Farmland next to bases being bought up by the Chinese around here.
Yeah, that's one thing. One thing I will give the Marine Corps: they are pushing drones down to the squad level. Now they're reconnaissance drones, but even then, being able to see over the next hill is a complete game changer. We did not have that ability when we were in. In fact, that one of the questions that was suggested that I asked tonight was, what piece of technology when you were in was a complete game changer?
Well, we were at the front end of the internet.
Mm-hmm. We
had email when nobody else did, and the Banyan networks and Novell networks. And, people, nobody I knew outside of the military had that stuff.
Mm-hmm. So there's two things. So the first M16 I ever shot was an M16A1. Still had the 3-prong flash hider on it,
mm-hmm.
and the A2, the M16A2 was a huge game changer. And then the LBEs, we went from the 782 gear to the LBE stuff. That was a big game changer. The big one for me from a computer standpoint, one of my friends from Lejeune had got stationed up at Quantico with I don't remember what the name of the unit was, but they were the ones that did all the testing on new equipment. And we went up there to visit her one day, and they had a digital phone switch that was deployable, and it was about the size of a standard generator. It would do 10,000 lines, so you could literally plug 10,000 phones into this thing, and set up an entire phone network off this one box, which was completely impossible whenever you and I joined the Marine Corps. And that was when I knew, okay, this is the digital age has completely changed the way the military functions now. But, well, dude, listen, we're getting close to the end of everything I wanted to talk about. It's almost crazy. We've been here for 2 hours. I can't believe this, man.
Yeah, we got a full-length movie here.
Yeah, we do. Listen, I hope everybody that showed up and watched this, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you found it interesting, informational, entertaining. This is we do this once a year, and the whole purpose of it is to share our experiences with the Marine Corps with everybody. We talk about doing some stuff we probably shouldn't have done when we were younger. We talk about the future of the Marine Corps from our standpoint. We talk about, the benefits. I know I think I can speak for both of us, Lana. It changed our lives. Mm-hmm. It made us better people.
Yeah, you talk about things we shouldn't have done. The good conduct medal is the I didn't get caught medal.
Absolutely. I had 2 of them. I'm not gonna lie. I managed to watch. I got a nuclear security clearance
Mhm.
4 weeks after I got a DUI. Yeah, yeah. Okay, there's a scary thought, people. I was guarding nuclear weapons right after I got a DUI. So take that for what you will. All right. But anyway, here's the thing. I said it before. I'll say it again. I have a hard time saying that joining the military is a good thing right now, even with the changes with Hegseth and the administration. We're heading into uncertain times, and as a parent, it scares the hell out of me. I have a hard time telling a parent, this is a good thing for your kid. Simple fact is,
The other day that I thought was about freaking time when he had that meeting when he pulled all the generals together.
oh yeah,
No more fat generals.
absolutely. I don't care if you like the guy or not. He's doing some really good work.
The troops have these standards, but look at you.
Well, that's important because we talked about running with the commandant of the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm.
As young Marines, that made a difference in my life. Knowing that he was out there doing the same thing I'm doing was a game changer. It puts him in a completely different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about him lifting the weights with you. He was out there pumping iron just like you were, trying to be better. So yeah, I agree with Hegseth 100%. But the fact is, we're not in the Marine Corps anymore. Part of our responsibility now as Marine Corps veterans is we need to look out for our communities. So if you're a Marine Corps veteran, Army veteran, Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard, our time on active duty is over. So we need to change focus, and I spend a lot of time. I pay a lot of attention to active duty Marine Corps just because I find it all fascinating, right? The simple fact is, we need to worry about our communities. We need to be responsible and step up in our communities and start guiding, any young men, young women that are thinking about joining the military. We need to guide them and make sure that it's the right fit for them. We need to work on modern self-sufficiency. We take the skills that we learned in the military, apply them to our personal lives. Like I said, Lynn and I were in a field in the late 90s, early 2000s. It provided us with a very good life. I was able to give my family a life that I did not have as a child because I was making some really good money. Right. But we need to share that. We need to share our experiences. We need to learn new skills and share those skills with our community members. And finally, and this isn't really the only thing I can tie this in with the military is I'm seeing a ton of people entering into the homesteading lifestyle from the military, right? A lot of people are getting out of the military and they understand the need to be food independent. And so they're buying property and they're building homesteads. So these are the areas that I suggest that we focus on as veterans. Support the guys that are in their active duty right now, even though I guarantee they're knuckleheads. They're just as big a knuckleheads as we were.
Mm-hmm.
But we support them and we just try to guide people through it all and get them out on the other side. Len, you got any closing thoughts?
Thanks for having me.
Anytime. All right. Hey, stick around. Don't click off. I'm gonna sign us off here in a second, and we'll do some administrative stuff behind the scenes. Guys, listen. Thank you for showing up. I hope you enjoyed it. All American says he enjoyed it. I hope other people enjoyed it. Don't forget, we've got our weekly live stream update tomorrow. And I'm probably going to unveil a new series that I'm thinking about doing. We'll see how it goes. We'll see what happens. I gotta do some more development tomorrow morning, but we'll see how it goes. I got it's actually a pretty cool series, and I got to figure out how to do it properly so it works well. Until next time, Semper Fi, all you Marine Corps veterans. You know, any guys that aren't Marine Corps veterans, we like you too, even though you're not Marine veterans. Go out tomorrow and live a lifetime free, guys. Take care.
Survival isn't just about having the right gear, it's about mindset. In a world without the rule of law, what will you do to survive? WROL isn't just a game, it's a tool to hone your preparedness and survival mindset. Test your instincts, outthink, outlast, and outmaneuver your opponents in a world that's fallen apart. With WROL, every card you play challenges your thinking, tests your adaptability, and sharpens your ability to make tough decisions under pressure. Whether you are planning for an everyday emergency or prepping for the end of the world, WROL helps you prepare for the chaos of everything in between. Ready to level up your survival skills? Click the link in the description to order your deck of WROL cards today and start building your SHTF mindset. The apocalypse starts here.